Hello, Internet! Gino, that Pinguino Grieco here again with another episode of Deep Listens, and today's episode is an impromptu special pod. I'm going to call it ZP Made Me Do It, and I am joined by Chris ZombiePie Redacted. Hello.
Hello. Normally I say an elongated summary of our experiences, but I think I'll pass that on off to you, Gino.
Yeah, today it is ZP Made Me Do It, Doki Doki Literature Club. So today's episode I was not expecting to play this game or to have things to say about it. I think you messaged me like a day ago and said, you need to play Doki Doki Literature Club. And I was like, okay, that sounds like a terrible visual novel. Last time you told me that, it was Nekopara, and now I'm on a watch list.
No. Last time it was Hatoful Boyfriend.
Yes, okay. So the 2 times ago you tricked me with Nekopara. Then you tricked me with... Well, I knew what I was getting into with Hatoful Boyfriend. That was fine. And then this time you told me, hey, do you like Undertale, right? I was yes, I do like Undertale.
And then I asked you, are you aware of Pony Island?
And I said, yes, I am aware of Pony Island, but have not played Pony Island.
You should consider playing Doki Doki Literature Club.
And so I did. And I streamed it because you said that was a good idea as well. And this game affected me in a way I did not expect. We will discuss it a lot. Well, not that. It probably won't be that long of a show because the game is not very long. But I will have more things to say about this than I ever anticipated.
Now, this is a far more serious podcast in comparison to our other follies into podcasting.
Yes. So I want to go ahead and... So first, let me just do the little plugs for getting in touch with the show. We don't have any feedback for today because it's a special impromptu show. But you can go ahead and send feedback to... Deep Listens on Twitter, or at Deep Listens, or at That Pinguino on Twitter. You can also hit us up on our comment section, deeplistens.libsyn.com. Any of our episodes have comment sections. We read there. And then also deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com if you want to send us an email. So, or do I actually, I guess I have an email. I might have an email from someone on our Final Fantasy episode.
Ooh.
I might actually have feedback. Let me just check real quick. The podcast email. Oh, I do. I have very appropriately, I have an anime email. So
What?
Do you think? Do you want to?
What?
We have an anime email.
Sure, let's go ahead. Can I say one? Can we?
Yeah,
Can
sure.
I push in one jokey joke thing on
Yes.
the podcast? So the first image for Nekopara was leaked, and you know, you made a joke about how you're on a government watch list.
Yeah.
The first image of Nekopara Volume 4 makes it seem like you are totally going to be on a government watch list. You apparently go back in time to when all of those characters are like 5 and 6.
Great. Fuck. Well, with that...
You know they got in trouble? Did you see how Nekopara and all of those games that are that got in trouble with Steam, and now they're prohibited of selling uncensored versions and file patches for their games?
That makes sense. They were just backdooring porn
you're correct,
into...
But then that same procedure has been applied to literally everything Christina Love has made.
Oh, yeah, I guess.
And Lady Killer in a Bind is basically the Steam version is not the version you want to play now.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's a hard line, and Steam is not, like Valve as a company, is not interested in making those hard choices. They tend to either universally allow or universally ban, and I would argue they should have more nuance. But then, hey, I also wouldn't outsource all of my reviewing and rating to community lists and shit like that. I would probably... Or Greenlight. Greenlight as a concept is fine.
Deeply distressing.
Yes, but deeply flawed. So it seems like passing the buck or making wide sweeping declarations is pretty much Valve's modus operandi for Steam Marketplace. So that doesn't surprise me at all. Now, with that out of the way, we have an email from Arbitrary Water.
Oh, boy.
Listener,
okay.
of the show, and he says, "Hey, Deep Listens crew, during your last Final Fantasy X-2 podcast, ZombiePie at one point briefly implored Gino to watch up to episode 16 of the anime Robotics Notes, telling you that it was amazing and that others could validate his claims. As someone who did that very thing at ZP's urging, I can tell you he's mostly right. The first 16 episodes of Robotics Note are, in all honesty, pretty great. They are well animated, low on anime bullshit, bring together a cast of likable characters, and end in scenes that are both emotionally powerful and totally crazy, which are likely what ZP is referring to when he endorses the show. What is implicit?
Past episode 16.
Yes, what is implicit,
Oh,
but unsaid
God.
in that statement, is that the show is 22 episodes long. The last 6 episodes more or less dump those emotionally resonant moments and the goodwill built up through the series in favor of an unsatisfying, unearned power fantasy climax. Maybe it made more sense in the original visual novel, but since that was never officially translated into English, I don't really know for sure. Should you watch the show? Yes. Just be warned that it never quite comes together in a satisfying way after episode 16, and no one would blame you if you decided to stop watching then and there. The other anime that ZP mentioned, Stein's Gate, does come together in a really satisfying way and is a lot easier to recommend without caveats. I'm not going to hijack your podcast with any further anime talk. Please, someone stop hijacking our show with anime talk. But let it be known that ZP's tastes in anime are usually better than his taste in food or his insistence that Mario Party is good.
Yeah, it's almost as if I briefly covered and reviewed anime in a professional capacity a long time ago.
Yes,
so
once upon a time.
I know how to discuss it in a professional capacity. Gino, one thing, now that I know what I know, Robotics Note features a scene where the protagonist, and I'll just say it, in episode 15, where the protagonist has to convince one of his close friends to not take their own life.
Huh. I don't know. Okay. That's, I think, a good place to segue into
He is successful.
Well, good. That's actually probably a good place to segue into our discussion of Doki Doki Literature Club by saying early on, though this game has a name that implies it is a dumb dating sim, it deals with some heavy stuff, and this show will deal with some heavy stuff as a result. So if you are not cool with self-harm, depictions of suicide, or discussion about depression, any sort of things like that, if any of those things bother you, maybe tune out of the show, or maybe, give it some time in between listens. No shame in it. I wish I had heeded the game's warnings more seriously, because it says on the opening screen, there is disturbing imagery in this game. I'm going to need you to hit OK if you're going to play it at all. And I thought that I didn't know. I didn't think.
Which also, to the developer's credit, good on including that.
Yes, and good on including a link to a support line. Like, I am really encouraged by how many games that deal with difficult topics are actually providing people with the resources to handle what emotions might come out of such discussion. It's a really great trend. At least three of the games that we've played recently, Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice, and Life is Strange, all of these games include resources.
I just realized you are recording this podcast almost immediately after recording the Setsuna's Hellblade podcast. So, shit, man, I'm really sorry.
No, it's fine. Like, Hellblade is a very different experience. So, Doki Doki Literature Club is a game.
I guess I can go through it.
It's free on Steam.
It's free on Steam, and for those that do play it on Steam for free, you can go to the developer's webpage where you can pay what you want for the game. It's encouraged to play the game all the way through, get the experience, whatever it may be, out of the game. And then you either can, just move on with your life or support the artist. I personally, after playing the game, felt so encouraged and kind of encouraged by what this developer had attempted in his game that I felt it was necessary to support him. So I actually did give him money. And for all of the problems that are associated with this game, I have to give this person credit. It is one of the most creative uses of a visual novel game I have ever seen my entire life. And it conjures emotions, for better or for worse. I know that's the most generic thing you could possibly say, and sometimes it comes across as condescending, but it conjures deep emotions in a way that
you do not expect going in. I'll say that much.
You do not expect going in.
So,
and the medium as a whole benefits from this person continuing to be part of the video game industry.
Yeah, I think it's worth, if you play this game and I would say enjoy it, or anything other than utterly hate it, you probably want to support it because the creativity exhibited here is really impressive. And with that said, it's going to be spoilers from here on out. So if that bothers you also, like, spoiler time coming. So this game is a horror game wearing a dating sim as its skin. And
correct.
It really lulls you into a false sense of security early on. It starts out, you are a boy. You're definitely a boy. You get to name your character. My character's name was Kawaii. What was your character's name?
Of course. I named it after myself, which kind of hurt.
That actually
things
ruins. That ruins one of the scares.
Yeah, it ruins one of the scares. But it used my first name and my last name.
Okay.
In that scene, and I was not ready for that.
That's fair.
So, I guess one of the first things we have to debate is, should this game have spent the first hour that it does with its audience, or was it necessary to spend as long as it did in the visual novel dregs that are the actual literature club and creating the poetry with the characters?
I would say yes.
Because I've oscillated between both, because without those scenes and that security, the game doesn't get the deeply affecting emotional response out of its audience if it doesn't do that.
Yeah, so when you start the game, you make your guy, and the creation is just pick a name, and then you get introduced to 4 girls. Sayori, Yuri. Wait, is it Sayori? Is that the
Sayori?
Sayori, sorry. Sayori, Yuri. What's the Sunder
Natsuki.
character? Natsuki and Monica, with a K.
Spelled with a K.
And these 4 characters are in a literature club, which basically means they write poetry and then compare poetry. And the gameplay early on, it is very dating sim. Yuri is the bookish girl with blue hair, with big boobs. She should have glasses, I feel like. Natsuki is
the tsundere.
Yeah, she's the small. She's younger than everyone. She's small. She's petite. She's got pink hair. She's got short hair, and she's a Sunder character. And then, who's the? Oh, what's her name again?
Sayori.
Sayori is the girl. Sayori. She is the girl next door who is clumsy.
Yeah.
And they are just tropes.
And then there's Monica.
Yes,
they are literal anime tropes.
She's the popular girl who is out of your reach. That is that is her role. And early on, you are writing poems, and depending on what word you pick, different girls will like your poem more, and that's supposed to increase your relationship with those characters. And then you occasionally get some dialogue choices like, oh, do you want to hang out with this person or this person? Do you want to spend time here or there? Do you want to say this or this? And as you're playing early on, the game feels just like a normal dating sim, if a little bit. There's some moments with Monica that feel a little bit out of place. Like some of her poems are weird.
Some of her poems will start referencing Load Me Now, and Monica completely, whenever she feels like it, is tutorializing you about the mechanics of the game in a way that breaks the fourth wall.
Yeah.
And your normal response is, oh, hey, you're just the character who's been shoehorned to give me a tutorial on this game's mechanics. and then it keeps doing that, but in ways that they feel off. Like, you could still kind of dismiss what Monica is trying to convey to you as, oh, it's just a tutorial. Oh,
Yeah, it feels more like the game might be shoddily made rather than, it doing something.
And that is one of my favorite design decisions associated with Doki Doki Literature Club, is how that first hour feels like someone made it using Game Maker or RPG Maker. The music is terrible. The literature is garbage that you actually create. The dialogue is questionable. And all of those characters, as you mentioned, are tropes. They don't extend beyond their tropes. They are literal anime tropes.
Yeah, there's nothing to them early on. And as you play the game, I don't know if the game shoehorns you into no, it's not Sayori. It's not
Sayori.
Sayori. I'm not sure if the game funnels you into Sayori being the first relationship, but it seems like you might be able to pick which of the three girls you end up with, in a dating sim kind of way. At least for me, Sayori was the one who I, seemed to be ending up with in the first one. And
So,
is that a railroad track?
Yeah. That is a railroad track. It's very linear with that because the scripting for it requires that Sayori have her moment first, then Yuri, and then by the time Natsuki is all that remains, it goes full Monica.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's another credit to the game, is that it subverts your expectation that you have a lot more control over the game when the game is exerting an incredible amount of control over you.
Yes, but it does
and it's the first hint of that.
It does a really good job, though, of making you feel like you've got some control. Now, like for me, when you write poems, that when you're comparing poems with the other classmates, you can pick different words that will make the poem appeal more to certain characters. And I saw that I was pretty evenly, distributed between each of the characters. I wasn't trying to mainline a specific character. So it seemed to me that, Sayori, the girl next door, might be the character with the lowest threshold. And that's why the game kept ending up with me and her in awkward situations and stuff. So it seemed pretty natural. But as you get further along the Sayori line, it becomes clear that something is up with her. She starts out very bubbly, very open, and eventually she starts becoming more distant. One of her poems is about she's got all this happiness outside, but she's giving it away. And as she's giving this happiness away to people, they're taking these jars full of her happy thoughts and breaking them, and she's left empty. And I'm like, oh, this is a deep, they're deepening these characters. These poems are actually fairly expressive.
It also bears repeating that all of the characters, their poetry evolves significantly. And like Natsuki's poetry is literally monosyllabic, like she's not giving a fuck about her poetry, and then slowly she's caring more and more. And so the game, again, is trying to sink its tendrils into you, into thinking that, oh, this is really a visual novel. This is really a dating. I'm having an impact on them. I'm helping them become better writers. I'm having them surface their true personalities. And so it kind of starts this positive feedback loop, which it is then able to, I guess, let's just call it for what it is, exploit when it reveals its primary conceit.
Yes. So at a certain point, Sayori?
Yeah. Keep going.
Sayori.
We're in a podcast where you're the one that's mispronouncing things.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And it's a Japanese podcast, too. It's because their names there's a reason why I'm mispronouncing her name and not the other two. So Sayuri was the character I was after, and you end up having some choices where you're talking to her, and she'll ask, hey, you seem to be getting along with this other girl. If that girl asked you to walk home with her, would you say yes or no? And I said, sure, I'd walk home with them. I wanted to be playing the field or, trying to get to know all of the characters a little bit more. And she takes that very poorly. And I don't know if she will take it poorly regardless of what you say. But the next day, she's basically missing for a while, and she's showing like real signs of depression. And it just keeps escalating. At a certain point, you're asked if you want to help get ready for a festival, and you can pick which girl you want to help for the festival. But Monica is not a choice. When you pick her, the game's like, no, Monica doesn't need help. And then when you pick Sayori, it's like, well, she's helping Monica. She doesn't need the help either. They're helping each other. So pick one of the other two. And so I picked Yuri. And then Yuri's like, hey, why don't I come over to your house, even though it's next door to this girl who's clearly going through some stuff. Oh, great. So you mean that the game is going to have this girl who, up until this point, it makes it very clear that this girl has a crush on you. And you're going to have this other girl come over your house and stay in your room. And I thought, okay, this is bad. This is going in a bad place. But my character went to Monica's house, not Monica, Sayuri's house before Yuri came over. And Sayuri is like, oh, actually, the reason why I've been acting this way is I have deep depression. That's why I wake up very late. And the only reason I'm so happy around you is because you've been the light that keeps me happy. And so I'm happy around you and not around other people. And it felt really genuine.
Again, the writing there, that's when the writing completely changes. It's very noticeable that it goes from trying to play up these anime tropes to now converting into its actual tone. And I've been thinking about it for a long while, ever since I played this game about a week ago. That game, that part of the game where you're helping Sayori, that game needs to be made.
Yeah, that game. When I thought I was playing that game,
a visual novel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I thought I was playing that game, I thought I was actually liking it, and this is where it started getting really like affecting for me, because the things Sayuri was saying, I've heard other people say to me and to other people around me, and it got me hard, because she's saying like, yeah, I'm only this way around you. It's because you're really supportive and you're really loving, and it's really hard for me, but maybe if we're doing this together, we can get through this. She's, leaning on your character, and it's really genuine, and your character like hugs her and gives her support, says, whatever you need, I'm going to be here for you. Okay. And your character then leaves, you hang out with Yuri, there's like a couple of flirty moments, but at the end of the moment, Sayuri comes up to your door and basically is like, it's okay, but I thought it would be okay, but it's not actually okay. I just love you. I can't, seeing you with someone else really hurt. And then you get the chance to tell her either I love you or you're my best friend. I'm going to be with you forever. You don't have to be alone. And I chose the I love you option because it seemed like my character was going down that route anyway. It seemed like a genuine response. And she clearly was hurting so badly. But her response to that is like, I should feel happy, but I don't. And then the next day, you go to class, I think, and she's not in school. And then you go back to her home to find her because you think that there's something going on. And you find that she's killed herself. And that moment is just so
crushing.
hard. It's just really, and she's hanging there. It's not like it's it's off screen. You just walk in on someone who's hung themselves, and the game lingers on it for a few seconds. And when that happened, I basically stopped playing for a bit. I was streaming at the time, and once I saw that, I just couldn't. I didn't expect it to go there, and when it did, it was really graphic. And the game hadn't done any sort of turn at that point. It seemed like it was really dramatic. Like maybe this was my fault. Like if I had chosen different things, this wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
And it seemed like a visual novel.
Yeah. And like I said, that game needs to be made. Like a visual novel that is about relationships and showing how one-sided relationships are dangerous, how one-sided relationships can be very harmful and destructive. That message needs to be conveyed to people who legitimately like this genre, like that style of game. Someone needs to confront that entire audience and maybe even the industry that this can happen. Something like this can happen if you really do believe that this fantasy world that has been concocted by an industry of, I'll just say it, monkeys on typewriters, that this industry is harmful, it is abusive, it is dysfunctional.
Yeah, these relationships are not genuine. They are always just these characters relying on this nameless, faceless hero who basically is the only character that matters. Everyone else is there for that character's enjoyment. Everyone is available because they must be. And it at this point it worked kind of as a commentary, but I thought that the self-harm was maybe a step too far too quickly. She went from happy-go-lucky to hanging herself very quickly, and it was just so graphic. And once I saw that, the game kind of glitches out and then restarts, and
that is when you find out you are not playing a visual novel game.
Yes.
That you are playing. So I think we mentioned it in the very beginning. Doki Doki Literature Club was made by a person who is an active member of the Super Smash Bros. Melee ROM hack community. And credit to him, the gameplay very much surfaces his love for ROM hacks and hacking games and having to manipulate files to do and perform very specific frames of animation or actions. It's around this time, like, when I truly felt like this was a very special game was when the game starts playing itself, and during your what is quote unquote the second playthrough, when Sayori is mysteriously gone, and whenever the game references her names, it's just a jumbled pile of text and
it's
ASCII
gone.
stuff.
It's ASCII stuff, and then whenever certain characters will speak, there will be other language like superimposed in black letters above what the other character is saying, and it's really interesting when it happens, and it starts playing its hand that something is afoot in this game. This character did not hurt themselves for no reason. There's something going on outside of that, and then you start kind of falling in with Yuri. And Monica keeps trying to get your attention, and the game just keeps, like, Natsuki and Yuri just keep getting in the way and preventing it.
Really weird stuff happens when you try to interact with anything that is connected with Sayori. The game becomes glitchy, or it seems as if it's trying to erase Sayori completely. And when you start interacting with Yuri and Natsuki, weird stuff happens to their faces where all of a sudden the face is blank, or their animation doesn't properly translate very well, or the few frames of animation that are going from normal pose going to happy pose, they all get fucked up.
Yeah.
And
it
scene...
Oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
You go ahead.
Okay. You start to realize that Yuri also has problems.
Yes.
She also has issues with her own emotions. And this is, again, another scene that I think is incredibly powerful, is you have this sense of, okay, urgency. I need to stop what happened to Sayori from happening to Yuri. And the game refuses to let you interact with Yuri. It refuses to let you stop what it's about to show you. It will start taking control of your cursor and say, no, you're going to talk to Monica now.
Yeah, and there are times when it's like, oh, I really shouldn't leave Yuri alone. She's talking, like in the first playthrough, I don't know if you always have to help Yuri or have Yuri come over your house. But when she comes over, she says she has a knife collection. And at one point, she like sticks out her arm and fidgets with her sweater. And she's got a long sleeve sweater. And your character says, "Oh, is it too warm in here? Do you want to take the sweater off?" And she's like, No, not taking the sweater off. And so she's got a knife obsession, and she won't take off her long sleeve sweater, and this game has been playing with self-harm. And it was at that point, like when I was started to put the things together, the reason why I stopped playing the game when I was streaming it was because it seemed to me very clear that this game was going to kill each of these characters and have them kill themselves. And I just, after seeing one of the characters hang, I could not deal with the game exploiting another character cutting themselves or hurting themselves with a knife. I just couldn't. And to the game's credit, once it pulls that first chair out from under you, it is very clear, very explicit that something wrong is going on here. Not that these characters are actually meant, like, it's no longer commenting on mental illness. It is now commenting on glitches and hacks and basically supernatural forces. And once it is clear that, the game is glitching and dialogue is really off, and there are some moments where Yuri is acting odd and the game gets like this fuzzy filter over everything, and her words will change and her eyes will kind of turn all glary, and it's like, oh, this is clearly not her, and then she'll snap back to herself and be like, what did I just say? And it makes it clear that this is not... None of this game is really a comment on mental illness at all. It's actually more subversive.
So that's part of the reason why I personally really not necessarily fell in love with. I don't think you can fall in love with this game, but I felt inquisitive about it and then felt like I needed to talk to people about this game because video games just don't do this. They don't ever do this. And I feel like something that when I was kind of covering content, television and anime content, a term I saw used far more than often than it should have been used was the idea of, oh, it's an anime, it's a television show in a genre of its own. Doki Doki Literature Club is in a genre of its own. It's subversive and transgressive. And something personally I feel like video games haven't ever had was a legitimate ground up transgressive art movement. And Doki Doki Literature Club is, in my mind, kind of an example of transgressive art in the video game industry.
I can see that.
It's disquieting. It offends your sensibilities. It holds no punches. It exploits everything in its toolbox. And to that means I had the same reaction I had when I watched Solo. Same response I had when I watched a John Waters film, Natural Born Killers, or even like a Clockwork Orange. Like, there's an exploitative element to this art, but it is surfacing a mature conversation that needs to happen. The conversation we're having needs to happen. Yeah. And so again, it's very much subversive and transgressive, but the industry needs a transgressive element. Painting and portrait painting. Their transgressive movement was when people first started experimenting with nude images, whether it be Pablo Picasso or Rembrandt. And filmmaking had, like I said, Solo and John Waters, the Natural Born Killers, so many subversive elements. And same thing with music. And the conversations that happened as a result of that transgressive art matured the medium, brought forth new genres, brought forth new creative ideas, new creative thinking to that medium as a whole. Because you don't have minorities in entertainment if there wasn't the burlesque shows of the 1800s or 1700s. You don't have dark comedy if, you don't have those early examples in which horror was mixed with comedy. You don't have a lot of what we enjoy today without the Gothic art movement, which started out as a transgressive movement.
Yeah, and I can see all that. I mean, once the game starts playing with what is real, ultimately Yuri ends up hurting herself. She kills herself as well. And when that happens, like, her mania is different than Sayori's.
It's much more abrupt as well.
It's abrupt, but it's clear that, like, she starts getting obsessed. She's like, I can't be without you. She gives you a poem that's, like, covered in blood and what looks like urine. It's, like, really messed up. And she's just like, I want to be around you all the time. And then you can accept her confession or not accept. She confesses her love to you, and regardless of what you pick, she ends up taking out a knife and killing herself in front of you. And then the game lingers on her corpse for, like, 3 days of game time. And she's just sitting there rotting basically in front of you. And then the game boots another time and deletes Yuri and Natsuki, and it's just you and Monika. And Monika reveals that she is sentient. She can manipulate the game code, and she just wants a line. This game basically existed, and she was never a dateable character, and she wanted love.
Yeah, so this is when I honestly feel like Doki Doki Literature Club transcends the medium, is when Monika basically confronts you. And
she says your name, like whatever your name is on your computer or your whatever system you're playing this on. She will read your files and say your names.
Your actual name. So yes, I did say Chris in my name, but she said my first and last name, which I am not entirely comfortable with a game saying my first and last name. So that got me, that horrified me. And then also, you saw it definitely, is Monika pulls you into an ethereal plane of existence. Yeah. And she basically makes it very clear. It's like, I don't want to be in this visual novel garbage. Like, you were going to totally solve all of their problems and date them and provide them love and passion. I don't care about that character. I care about you. And she stares directly at you. And the other disturbing touches really add to it. Like, the music is incredibly discordant. And when you move your mouse cursor, her eyes follow your mouse cursor. And she starts...
I don't think it does that. I didn't notice that.
For me.
Okay. Maybe you have it different. Maybe you had a different glitch than me.
But... yeah, her eyes follow your mouse cursor in certain states. And she's referring to you by name. So me, Chris, you, Gino. And she starts singing to you. And she starts to kind of confront that she has basically stripped away this artifice, stripped away this facade, so as that she can finally be, quote unquote, happy. And that she's done all of these terrible acts so as that she can finally have happiness. Because it's very clear she was never going to be a dateable character. It was just a choice between those three girls. And she refuses to accept that. And I don't know if I want to say this. Oh, never mind then.
Well, on the second playthrough, when you start picking poems, one of the words that I picked, I actually saw a little chibi version of her jump from off screen, because up until that point, there's the three dateable characters, and they will react if you pick a word that they like. And when it's only two, I'm like, oh, okay, it's just these two. And then occasionally I'd pick one, and it'd be like, hey, I'm here. Please, let me date.
And
it really subjugates your expectations, and the way you complete the game is by going into the file system and deleting Monika's character, rebooting the game, and then she's gone. And then the game reboots
but then
finally.
The second good twist happens when you do that, where, it's just Sayori, it's just Natsuki, it's just Yuri. And then Sayori is the leader of is the president of the literature club, and freaking the best I actually think this is even scarier than her using your name. Is eventually when everyone leaves, Yuri and Natsuki leave, Sayori confronts you and says, I felt everything that I felt. I remember everything you did. Yep. And her words aren't directed at your player character. They're directed at you.
Yeah. And
she's chastising you. It's like, why didn't you do more to protect us? Why didn't you? And then that just, my heart sunk.
Oh, really? For me, she said, I know that you tried to help all of us and you tried to save us. But she's
okay,
like...
So if you don't do enough, she chastises you? So I actually told you how to get the better ending in the game, right?
No, I just did.
Okay, we'll talk about that. But no, yeah, there's an outcome where she's like, I felt everything that you did. I felt everything that happened. I don't forget that. And then Monica stops the game one more time.
Yeah.
And then just completely deletes everything.
Yep.
And in certain states, I think the original version of this game, it refused to allow you to play this game if you tried to boot it up again, unless you uninstalled and reinstalled it. And it starts to...
I mean, it still does that.
It still does that? Okay.
Yeah. You can't. I needed to uninstall it and reinstall it, and then I played around with the file system a little bit. If you delete Monica at the beginning of the game and then reboot, the game just cuts to end, and then it just shows you Sayori hanging for as long as you keep the game open.
If you delete everyone but Monica, she just greets you with like the images of them, all of them dead, black and white, upon the booting up of the game. And it's deeply affecting that, like, when you try to get one up on Monica, this omnipotent, sentient artificial intelligence, she is able to respond, or is programmed to respond accordingly, every possible outcome. And sometimes it's very superficial and exploitative, like greeting you with an image of Sayori hanging.
Yeah.
But in other ways, it's like deeply affecting, like just greeting you with the end got me. So I don't know if I ever told you, but there is a true ending. Did you get my messages on Steam about how to get that?
I saw, but I didn't get it. I know that you can. There are ways to manipulate the files and make the right dialogue choices to make sure that none of the girls get hurt.
None of the girls get hurt. And so what you need to do is, and this is incredibly creative, and it requires a lot of effort on the part of the developer to do this, but you have to manipulate your saves, which at some point Monica deletes all of your saves, and it's like, you don't need to save. The game is good again. You don't need to save. And so you need to embark on a manipulation of the character files and save states that you have to see the game without ever witnessing Sayori's suicide the first time around. And if you do that, Sayori greets you, Monica's totally gone, and she states to you, it's like, thank you so much. We get to finally be the characters that we always wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of cathartic that I went through all of that hard effort. I don't know if it's worth it because it requires a lot of time and effort, but just to have that character say, thank you, I wish I could do more for you. And then she finally ends on, if you ever want to see us again, we'll always be here.
Mm-hmm.
And
this is the moment. So some of the moments in the game, I thought that it was there are two really big kind of contradictory things going on in my head when I was playing this. One is invoking mental illness and self-harm as a tool for generating a scare. I found that really, at least the game was honest. It said it was going to do stuff like this, so I can't fault the game. And it was not for, jump scares. Like, there were narrative, Like, I think it does something like this as well as can be done. But the game is also kind of a postmodern commentary on dating sims. And there's the one hand where, hey, these sims are really tropey and kind of garbage. But the game, throughout some of the poems that you read, kind of makes the argument that, yes, some of these hobbies, some of these things that you can look on and say, hey, this is trash. This is not, the genre itself is garbage. Some hobbies are massively derided and sometimes with cause. But if it's not hurting anyone, why not just let them have their fun? There's a poem that Natsuki writes about someone who likes spiders, and it's basically, I hate this girl because she does all these nice things for me, but she likes spiders, so we can't be friends, and she's gross. And Yuri writes a poem also that's something like, there's this raccoon outside of my house, and I feed it. I know I shouldn't feed it, but I do. And the more I feed the raccoon, the more it follows me around. And, the raccoon is me and my hobby. It's a metaphor. If the raccoon is me and my hobbies. And so I feel like the game is really commenting on, hey, these games that might be viewed by some as trash and as exploitative or very simple, something to be derided. Because the people who enjoy these games don't, they're not hurting anyone. They enjoy it. It's just a safe place. This is a game that is, at first blush, a safe space for someone who just wants to enjoy some low-impact, flirting. Like, it's a really, or, just enjoy a school day. Have a moment where people are paying attention to them or characters are paying attention to them and making them the focus. And it's really... It communicates that, like, this kind of game is an outlet for that kind of emotional fulfillment. And then the game basically breaks it and shows that, hey, yes, it's subversive, yes, it's clever, but do you need to do that to a genre that is supposed to be or for many people, is just about interacting and having these light, frivolous, emotional connections? And is there anything wrong with that? And I think it plays with that tension back and forth. Like, is the game better because it has this subversive element? Should we just let these people be without really critiquing them or commenting on it? And I think that the game, playing between these two divergent poles, really finds a nice tone. It finds a nice space to make the critiques, but also make the defenses.
Yeah.
And it's rare for a game or for any piece of media to do that, to elegantly show both ends of this conversation in a way that is not judgmental, and I don't feel like I know where the game ultimately stood.
Well, I think I would argue that you would have to refer to the actions of Monica in terms of understanding what the game's message there is. What happens when you disturb this safe place is you end up causing far more harm, whether intended or unintended, you could ever imagine. Like, the consequences are dire and disturbing. And while these characters in real life would never want to be in this strict paper cookie cutter world, that's kind of the message I got out of Monica, is it's a character outright refusing to play her role, is when that character recognizes that and decides to violate the safe environment, it's a truly harmful thing to do.
Yeah, but when she has those protestations and when she says, that it hurts me, that I actually turn the game off when you're in the ethereal room, and she says, I had a dream. What happened? There's sometimes I dream that I'm dead, and then you're back, and everything's okay. Can you look into why that is? So she doesn't understand what happened, saying that she doesn't understand what's happening when the game is turned off. She's basically dead until you come back. When you ultimately delete her, and then even after she deletes everyone else and says, no, this world is meaningless, I need to destroy it, she then plays you a song She talks
Yes.
to you. Monica's the
talks
only
to you.
voiced character.
It's the only voiced character in the game, and she even starts singing to you, which for me was deeply affecting.
Yeah, but the singing is not... It's not completely dismissive of... It doesn't completely distance itself from dating sims as a genre when that happens. It's not like the song is subversive. It's not like the song is something that evokes horror, even. It's a song of someone... It's a genuine song of someone who loves someone else.
I would issue a slight disagreement there, but continue.
No, I just felt like the tone and the word choices, I expected them to be grim and subversive, but they are mostly... They reference things in the game, but they reference stuff about the literature club and poetry, and not, the murdering.
Yeah, well, for me, I felt like that's a perfect example of it not being just a slasher horror, not being just a monster horror, which I think those games are terrible, whether it be Corpse Party or any of the yandere tropey visual novels. It's this game maturing the genre as a whole, because anything that has any horror element in the visual novel format, basically, oh, it's a ghost. Oh, the ghost is killing people. Oh, now I have to look at this still image of this person's guts hanging out for like 2 minutes, and that's the scare. With this, she's doing something that is a known, established trope, singing to the audience, and because you know the context, or because you understand what's everything happened in the game, it means and has a completely and totally different tone and different meaning as a result. And so It's using and subverting that, I'm going to sing to the audience because this is a J-pop wonderland. And it's using something that is referencing the genre and talking about, well, here's the flip side of that. Like, this is what happens when you have these abusive relationships. This is what happens when you're back to this reality, this plane of existence.
Yeah, and I think when it's just you and Monica, it makes it very clear that these relationships, like for as one-sided as the Yuri relationship and the Sayori relationship is, the Monica relationship is the most dramatic in its criticism of these one-sided depictions of love, because these characters don't exist.
These characters don't exist, and she recognizes she doesn't exist, and that's why she wants to have a relationship with you and not the player character. It's because you do exist. You do exist. You do have the emotions that she's trying to
simulate.
And she wants a relationship with you because she knows that's real.
Yeah. This game is, like I said at the top, know what you're getting into. I wish I had known what I was getting into.
I probably should have warned you, and I'm deeply sorry for that.
No, that's fine. You didn't know. But it's... When I kind of went back and forth on it and thought about it, and I think that the way that it handles the troubling subject matter that it invokes, I should say, it handles it as well as it can, and it doesn't do it lightly or frivolously. And I expected it to do it. When I uninstalled the game the first time, it was because I thought that it was just going to be stupid and play with mental illness as a dumb character beat. And I thought it was going to be a slasher thing. I thought that it was going to brutally kill each of the next two characters. I thought I was going to have to watch it happen. I thought it was going to be as long and as drawn out as kind of the first part of the game is. And when I saw that coming, I just said, no, I don't want to see how this ends. Ha ha ha, it's clever. But if you can, take time, get into an emotional place where you can keep playing the game or put it down, take breaks, whatever you need to do, I think Doki Doki Literature Club is one of the more unique and well-made games I've played in a while. It's really impressive.
It's deeply affecting. It's subversive
and terrifying.
And literally, I think we've talked about the emotions, but when I think you can agree with this as well. When Monica says your real name in the game, that is without a doubt the scariest moment I have ever had in a video game for the past 10 years.
Yeah,
it is
that's pretty messed up.
This is legitimately, I would argue, one of my top 10 scariest games I've ever played.
Yeah,
and what's amazing is that it does this without using a monster. It does this without using a slasher. It does it without embracing kind of the dreck of the horror genre. It's a genre that's used so often, but never quite done to its proper potential. It is a psychological horror.
Yes, it earns it.
It earns its distinction of being a psychological horror, and that's why I would say Doki Doki Literature Club is in a genre of its own, because it does take note of your emotions, your personal connections with these characters. It builds those, and then it completely strips everything down.
Yeah,
and then
it does the like Silent Hill Shattered Memories, or what's the name of that horror game for the PS4? We played it on this show.
Deep something.
No.
No. The one with the teenagers in the cabin?
Yeah, with the teens and the cabin.
Yeah.
Until Dawn.
Until Dawn.
Yeah, it does. It seems to be operating in that space. You know, it's making you click words that you like, and it seems to be operating in that space, and then it's like, no, actually, even some of the horror tropes that you think it might be playing with, it is not. And I think it's really inventive. And so that's Doki Doki Literature Club. I recommend.
I'm glad you saw it through. It is the definition of a game that I would say it's not for everyone, but it is without a doubt a work of art.
Yeah,
and
it's the craftsmanship is strong. It is getting at things that games rarely do, and it's doing it in a way that games rarely do.
And the amount of I can only imagine like the amount of time that it took to program every possible thing in that game and have the sequence of events play out exactly as they did. Like it's a true I was about to say it's a labor of love, but that doesn't really
I don't know that
coincide.
the person who made this game loves dating sims, though. I will say
no,
it's
actually,
a better
I read
dating
an interview.
sim.
I read an interview and someone just straight up asks, like, what is your relationship with anime? And it's like, I hate anime. I absolutely hate and despise. And I think he talked about how he hates and despises how emotionally exploitative commercialized visual novels and animes are of their audience, without understanding how much responsibility the creators should bear, but they're not expected to.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that that's all I really have about this game. I would recommend you take the warning seriously. Some of the images are really disturbing, and this game is unlike any I've played in a good long time. So check it out if any of this sounded interesting. Like, you should let us know what your experience with the game was. If you want to do so, at Deep Listens Pod or at That Pinguino on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. You can write in our comment sections, or deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. And thank you once again for introducing me to the CP.
I'm happy you were able to be a part of this. Again, I'll consider everything that I've learned. I learned so much from this game. Holy shit. Like, I've learned a lot. And so I would also thank you, Gino.
Okay. So, till next time, listeners, peace!